On today's episode of Bytes and Banter, we're joined by Lisa Duerre. She's the co-founder, business strategist, leadership strategist with RLD Group. How are you doing today, Lisa?
Oh, Rocky, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you. I know as we kind of have some conversations leading up to this episode recording, you talked a lot about things that I think are going to be really useful for our audience and really beneficial, specifically in the tech space. And your organization that you are part of, that you've co-founded, RLD Group, really focuses on tech, folks and people who are in leadership in tech. And I would love for you to kind of talk a little bit about what is RLD Group? What do you guys do? How do you do it? Just high level for audience who haven't maybe have heard of RLD Group before.
Oh, thanks. So one of the things I'll say, RLD Group stands for Rebooting Leadership Drive. And we are a boutique coaching and consulting firm based out of Silicon Valley. We also have an office in Portland, Oregon. And we help companies prevent burnout, drive high performance, and create spaces for well-being at the workplace, right? So that the workplace can work for all, because we all know that the world we're living in is upside down and sideways. And leaders that are living and leading in tech need that type of support to be able to hit the customer goals as well as the internal goals.
I love that. So it's about really, transforming tech leaders and avoiding burnout in that. I think sideways, left, right, up, down. So true in our landscape, and it's always changing. And you didn't start your career, right, as a co-founder and starting this organization. Really, there was moments in your life that you really saw a need for this in the industry. And I would love for you just to tell a little bit about your background, your story. What's that catalyst moment where you went from what you were doing, right, whatever that was. Feel free to explain that a little bit, to seeing this need and deciding to make the step to really offer this service in this boutique format to tech leaders.
It's so interesting when I think about this, and we've been in business, we're going on our 8th year, so it's interesting to look back to see what happens when you step into this calling. But I spent over 25 years inside tech, and I was a tech executive focusing on customer support, sales, kickoff meetings, field engineering, training, leadership development. I did a lot around the lens of just helping create cultures where the employees inside tech can thrive. And when I was looking at all of this inside the organization, I also found myself burning out and questioning, am I creating enough value? Especially once I became a mom. I became a mom late in life at 43 years old. And so I was able to do the nights and weekends before that easy. I did it for decades. And once I had a daughter, I really was struggling with balancing work and life in a way I'd never had to before. So I had a pretty epic burnout experience. And I always thought to myself, I thought I was immune to this because I'd figured it out for so long, but something so dramatic changed in my life. I started to see the world through a much broader lens with the aging parents that we have in our world and all the caregiving that goes on behind the scenes that no one sees behind the Zoom screen, much less, raising children or perhaps even just caring for family members. So once I figured out what the path to burnout was and I was able to reboot from burnout, I really started talking about it more inside the organization I was in. And at a point where my mom was terminally ill and I was really thinking about legacy and impact and how to be present with her in the time we had left, is when I decided to leave and form the consulting firm for more flexibility and larger impact. So there's more to double click on there, but they say our mess is our message. And we hear this a lot in the world, and the only reason I feel comfortable talking about burnout is because I've experienced it and I know it worked for me and what we do to help our clients as well. So I'm not speaking from a book where I haven't lived it. I got the t-shirt more than once, and I understand when you're in it, you don't know it, you can't see it, and you just start to feel like, what is wrong, until you can look back and go, oh, okay, here's what I can do to prevent that next time. So I'm thrilled to talk about that today.
Oh, I love that. I love that idea, that saying, that phrase, the mess, our mess is our message.
Yeah.
And, and I think we'll probably dive into this, but it's our message if we let it be, right? Right.
It's our message if we let it be. Yeah. And it can be a calling card as well, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And I think you have this story where you really saw that calling card, right? And specifically with, kind of just the stress of work and things getting to you, and that burnout really hitting you in a serious way that, and that phrase calling card, I think it probably was that for you, Lisa. Walk me through that a little bit. Can you talk about that experience, right? Because you saw the need, you kind of started talking about your organization, but walk me through that catalyst moment where you're sitting on a computer in a place you never should have been.
Yeah, so it's around midnight, and I'm at El Camino Hospital in the emergency room with my laptop working on my slides in between the emergency room team ruling out a heart attack. And I had a colleague with me, and we were working on our slides, and I took a selfie because we had just completed the slide deck, and I sent that to my boss and said, okay, 9 o'clock tomorrow, I'll be there, right? We got the slide deck done. And I was really proud of myself at that moment. Like nothing could stop me from getting the work done. Nothing, not even ruling out a heart attack. And what had happened was I was at work and I had this radiating pain going up and down my arm and my neck. And I remember hearing in some health class somewhere that symptoms in women are different than men when it comes to heart attacks. And I calmly around 7 p.m. said to my colleague, I'm just going to drive on down the road to El Camino Hospital, just get something checked out, but I'm bringing my laptop. We'll get this done. And she looked at me like, are you kidding me? You're going to drive to the hospital? No. So she drove me simply because she was worried that I might hurt someone on the way, that I might actually have a heart attack while I'm driving to the hospital. So, the first step for me when I look back is if you think you're having a heart attack, your laptop is not the priority, right? Just straight out. But I did take my laptop and we did go to the hospital and we did finish the presentation and I did go to work the next day and present. And at the time, my daughter was around 2 and my husband was at home with her and I was texting him from the hospital saying, just being safe, everything's going to be fine. I got to get this done, but I'm going to go be sure that there's nothing more serious going on. And I was discharged without a diagnosis and they couldn't find out what was wrong. So, when in my follow-up visit with my doctor, the thing that really got to me was I was, really teary-eyed, like, I don't know what's wrong. Why is all this stuff happening? And I had an allergic reaction to an antibiotic because I had chronic bronchitis because I had been working so much and not resting. I asked my doctor to put me on this different medication to try and help me get better. And it's the kind of antibiotic that causes a tendon tear in your body. This is a side effect of this for some people. And that was what was happening to me was my muscles were reacting to this medicine. And I'm just shocked and angry and like really frustrated and really scared because I knew I wanted to get more work done. How do I get back to the office? But this bronchitis is in the way. And he sat me down and he said, Lisa, what you have is Silicon Valley-itis. And I just looked at him like, what is, I've never heard of this one, right? And he said, this is what I see most often in my office every day. You have burnout. You are burnt out. So the reason you have chronic bronchitis, the reason you're having these things go on, it's not because you're just like regular sick, like you're burnt out and this is what's happening in the valley. And I was just, honestly, I was gobsmacked and really sad because I thought, I could see this coming. I know what's going on and I couldn't. And so he wanted to put me on a medical leave and I refused and I went back to work. And my husband is the one that sat me down and said, this has got to stop. This is not okay. You are worth more than a job. And I negotiated a medical leave with my husband and my doctor so I could complete my projects and go with good conscience and take some time off. And Rocky, there's so much more to it because it's not like I just took a medical leave and chilled out. No, I kept working and they had to take my phone away and we did a whole bunch of stuff to make sure. But, I just saw it as, do the job and don't let anybody down. This badge of responsibility at all costs. And so now that I can look back on it and I understand what happened, I really want to help people not have to get there because you don't have to. And a lot of it was the choices I was making. It was not all organizational overlay. There was a lot that really, when I think about my thoughts, my beliefs, and the decisions I was making, I contributed to the burnout.
Yeah, Lisa, I think you don't hear a ton of people who explicitly talk about those extremes, right? I think you see it silently happening definitely right now in the industry because the job market is what it is and there's all of these stories and videos about people being laid off and them trying to look for jobs and I applied to this many jobs and the AI doesn't recognize my resume and so people are just fueled, right? And I think we'll talk a little bit about the societal landscape we're in as we talk about burnout, but you don't see it as often in people vocalizing it, but I think it's such an important critical topic. And some things stand out to me about your story specifically. And one of them is you had people in your life that were willing to bridge the gap and say, hey, you need to
Yeah.
come to reality, right? If you didn't have those people in your life to do that, man, you might, who knows what could have happened, right? Just the negligence on the
Yeah.
health. And so that's just such a, I didn't catch that the last time we talked about your story. And I think this really stands out to me. And we talked a little bit about, and you kind of alluded to it. Part of it was on you, right? Your boss wasn't telling you to work 85 hours a week and you got to go to the hospital and get this done here, right? So walk me through kind of your thought process. Like, what was the mindset that drove you to that place where I might be having a heart attack, but I have to get these slides done? Like, what was that mindset?
Even when you say it, I want to cringe. Like, oh my gosh.
It's a little cringy, Lisa.
It's a little cringy. Overachieve much, Lisa Duerre, right? First I'll say when you talk about the people in my life, yes, even my colleague who was like, I'm going with you. How lucky was I and how lucky am I to be surrounded with people? Because my team could see this happening. There were many times there were people at work that would bring me lunch, not even ask me what I wanted. They'd stick it on my desk. I was responsible for a global organization. I had a lot of work to do regularly. And I was also balancing motherhood early on, right? She was around 2. And there were people just like, okay, we're just going to help her. Like we can see, she can't see it, but we'll help her. And I was so grateful. I mean, lunch would drop on my desk. I'm like, oh, I would have forgotten to eat, And really when I left on the medical leave and I was still on my phone, I didn't want to let anybody down. So one of the things I can say for sure is there's like a high responsibility pull through. And responsibility is one of the Clifton strengths that we talk about with our clients. We use that assessment a lot. But when you have high responsibility, it's like, I will not fail. I will not let you down. And so part of I think the overall arching thought process that was going on for me was, what will people think? What if I let them down? What if something breaks? And will I be mommy trucked? I had a real worry about that because I had seen it happen over and over again, right? And you're not sleeping well and you're raising a human being and trying to figure that out too. It requires a whole different approach to time management and self-care for sure. But when I took the leave, and I still had my phone, I was checking my email anyway, which is not what you're supposed to do on a medical leave. And so my husband called the doctor and they pulled me into a meeting together and basically said, this is what's at risk. Like, we're giving you this chance. You have the time off and you're not doing what's necessary, which is rest, hydrate, right? And I didn't know, I was almost like I was addicted to being needed. Right. And so what I had to do was my husband got me a personal phone because I combined everything back then. We turned my work phone off and he hid it from me. And I had a personal phone. And I just decided if I'm given this gift and I have the luxury, if you will, of insurance coverage and a supportive team and a doctor who has my back and a husband who understands, I'm going to go do what I need to do. And honestly, Rocky, the first thing I did was just sleep. I slept for weeks. I just slept for weeks. And what I started to realize was I had been in a do loop of being on. And so there's this like always on, never good enough, will replace you tomorrow, which I know is I'm not the only one that felt that. And I had to replace that with, good enough is good enough. And, your body comes first so that you can be the performer you need to be back at work.
Mm-hmm. Your value is so wrapped up in your role and what you were doing.
Yep.
And that's something we haven't heard a lot of people talk about specifically on this on Bytes and Banter on these episodes. But I think it's so true. Like when your value is wrapped up in just your task. I mean, when that task goes away, right, or you don't accomplish the task, like what does that do to your confidence and your trust in yourself, and just crushes it. And what was the mindset shift? Like where did your mindset after that medical leave? And I kind of want to pivot to the burnout piece, but before we dive into the weeds of it, where did your mindset go? Like, what was different, right? If you had to look back and say, okay, before I was in the hospital, and before I took medical leave, was me. What was that, contrast that for me a little bit?
I think we've talked about it already, but for me, it was this always on, never good enough, will replace you tomorrow, got replaced with, I am good enough, and if not here, somewhere else, right? Like really understanding that the value I bring is not wrapped up in that PowerPoint deck or that, great sales kickoff I ran or the, technical training we just did, that what I contribute, especially being a mom at that point too, right, is much more than just the projects that are delivered. And the most interesting thing that happened was when I took the time off, it created space for everyone on my team to rise, right? Step up, do things they wanted to, because I wasn't there to do them all. And when I came back, I really didn't want to go back to the way it was. And so we renegotiated work together as a team. And I decided, I will eat lunch and I will take walking meetings and we will talk about our well-being and really look at how we leverage our strengths and play to what energizes us. Because one of the things that I saw was that I never gave myself time to reflect or think as strategically as I'm capable of, because it was back to back to back and it was fear-based. So if you think about a line of like conscious leadership, I was below the line in fear and scarcity. And when I came back, I went back into possibility and abundance. And this has really shaped how we bring everything from RLD Group into the organizations we work with, because most people fall below the line. We're wired for this. But what are the tools, resources, mindsets, and support systems you need to get back above that line to be your best at work and in your life? So I think for me, it was really trying to figure out what are the goals I'm chasing and how do I want to feel? And I think before I was just chasing like validation of worthiness and good enough. And then on the other side, what I was chasing was, great results, but also not losing myself. And I don't know if I have a better word right now because it's still really raw when I talk about it, because this is a kind of embarrassing thing, right? Yeah, you're so addicted to work, right? But there was a work addiction and there was a fear of failure, right? And so I think I redefined failure.
Now that I can see that being fresh, even as you talk about it now, still kind of, I wouldn't say an open wound, but still like a sore spot, right? And I hear you talking, and it's funny because I can hear your sentiment around going from a place of fear to a place of hope, right? And where fear exists and abounds, you can't have hope, right? And you chose to have hope and focus on the things that weren't outside of your control, and I love that. And now let's talk a little bit about, like, I want to give you the opportunity to really flesh out what RLD Group, right, partners with tech organizations, and specifically to help them add value, right, without preventing burnout. What are those things that you guys have found as you talk to tech organizations that are really driving burnout? Like, what are those things that you see commonly pop up?
It's interesting because when I formed RLD Group, my background's human resources, organizational design, appreciative inquiry, positive psychology. I have all this in my wheelhouse. And I started to really look at, and there's 20 of us in our organization. So I believe that the wisdom is inside the group. It's not in one person. And so we came together and we really started thinking, how do we approach this? And what does it really look like? And there's 3 ways I think that stand out. And that's looking at the person, the head and the heart connection. Because before burnout, I was above the neck only. I was only in analytical thinking mind. I wasn't listening to my body's symptoms, the feelings I was having. I mean, burnout, your body's telling you way before your brain catches up, right? So there's the connecting of the head and the heart of the human inside. So that's I. And then there's the we, which is the team. And then there's us, which is the organization. And so what I'm seeing most of the time when it comes to leadership is that these leaders are brilliant. They are motivated. They take great pride. Their identity is in their output, right? I can relate to that. And when they get promoted and they're not equipped or supported with the insights that are needed to prevent burnout or to create an engaging workforce or to identify with people's strengths and how you organize your team and your structures and your processes, you're ripe for burnout. And that's just at the I level, the leader. But then when you look at the team, if there isn't trust and psychological safety, if there aren't clear goals, if there isn't measurement, accountability, and discipline to get that done, you're also in the wild west of, well, I better take it all on and do it all, right? And so you can just see it exponentially get more complex. And it's not even just complexity, Rocky. I think the other part of it is all consuming, right? When you don't have the clarity, because when you get to the us at the organizational level, there's pockets where it's working, but overall, it can be working so much better when everyone is clear on their job role, what the expectations are, how to ask for help, what the priorities are. Because I think tech runs in the tyranny of urgent. Everything is important, and I know I was living that way. So those are some of the things we see, but the overarching swimming pool, if you will. The overarching atmosphere surrounding all of this is something that's been coined by, and I never pronounce this person's names right, but it's Jameis Kaisko. It's author, futurist, and someone who writes a lot about what's coming. And this person identified this phrase, this acronym to describe our world, which is Bonnie. And that stands for brittle, anxious, nonlinear, and incomprehensible. And so while if your head and heart aren't connected and you don't have clear goals and you don't know the boundaries and everything's important and you're in this kind of world where everything is upside down and sideways, as I said, it's exponentially probable that the burnout is going to hit even faster and harder, because what was the world that we were in is no longer the world that we're in today. And the world that we're going into is different than the world that we were in. And so if we don't recognize this change and we don't really step into analyzing what am I bringing to work, what matters most right now, how am I going to regulate my nervous system, then it's a, I don't want to say it's a bomb, but it's a hospital room waiting to happen.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah. You talked early, it kind of just in that, fleshing that a little bit, about focusing so much on output, worrying about the output and instead of the outcome, right? Which are not the same. Output drives outcome. And if you don't know what outcome you're trying to drive for, your output you're measuring isn't going to really add value, right? Or you're not going to know how it adds value. I think there's a lot there. But as you talk about the heart and head connection, how does the approach in terms of like what you guys do with organizations, how you walk them through preventing this or navigating through it if you're already in it, if you're in the muck of, this burnout cycle, how does the idea of having a bigger mission, a bigger goal in the I section, right? Every organization has a quote unquote a vision, a mission. Simon Sinek calls it a just cause, right? Every organization has one of those, whether they live it out, how they live it out, up for debate across organizations, right? Do their employees even know what that is or how they're contributing to it? Go down a rabbit hole all day on that topic. But I'm curious to know, is there a connection between, hey, you as a leader have a personal mission that's separate from work that helps prevent and helps mitigate some of this? I'm curious if there's any tie to that heart piece when it comes to the head and the things that tech leaders are doing at work.
Oh, I love this question so much because, there's so many times inside tech they don't want to talk about the heart, just get the job done, right? So, Rocky, your question says a lot about how you look at the world and who you are and what you bring. So thank you for that, because if you're just stuck in your head, you are not connected to your true energy source. Your heart is an energetic source, right? It ties to your values. You can be clear. It helps your intuition, right? So one of the things that when I burnt out, the first book I picked up was called The Desire Map, and it was by Danielle Laporte. And the question she said is that every goal you're chasing is really a feeling you want to feel. So how do you want to feel? And that informed a lot of when I returned back is how did I want to feel? Instead of like irreplaceable, which is how I wanted to feel, I wanted to feel valuable. That's different, right? So the nuance in getting clear on how you want to feel was the starting point for me, and really informed how we work with our clients, whether it's coaching, consulting, workshops, etc. And the heart really taps, there's two ways I would look at the heart. One is somatically in our body. There's energy and those electrical pulses, and that energy is telling you if you get a headache, there's something going on. It's a symptom of something, right? You get that pit in your stomach when the call from the legal team, oh God, legal's calling, right? Or heck, gosh forbid, when we, all the support peeps through your world, when we're waiting for that call back, like, is my computer going to be fixed or not? Are we getting the all of the different systems rolled out on time? Like, there's anxiety running through the system. And so if you are not clear on your values, how you want to feel, and what you can do to support your body in the stress world that you're in, then you are disconnected from your head, because you're just going to logically push your way through. And, it's interesting when I'm talking about this out loud with you. I think the fundamental component to this from the head and the heart, as I'm going, 'cause I love this question because I never get asked this. Yeah. So the thing I want to say is that if you can just even take a moment to pause, take a deep breath and check in, like what's going on in my body, that will then inform your mind to make a better choice. And so I think for leaders, we have to connect them. The head and the heart, that is. And the people.
I think that's so good. Like for me, I find I have my personal mission taped to my desk. And this is the reason I asked the question. It's because like my personal mission has nothing to do with work, has nothing to do with my tasks. It has nothing to do with, it's all about who I want to be as a human being, the value I want to bring to the world. And it informs how I approach my team and informs how I approach difficulties and circumstances. But transparently, so I've never thought about really putting down kind of how do I want to feel in those moments, right? And recognizing in the moments that I don't feel that, or I'm feeling completely opposite of that, and being willing to connect that to my mind and saying, okay, I'm feeling stress, I'm feeling anxiety, I'm feeling the pressure, whatever it is, whether it's budget related, it's, an issue with HR, there's something that comes to my desk, legal, like all these things you're kind of talking about. An outage, right? Microsoft had an outage yesterday that impacted tons of organizations. Right? CrowdStrike, like, oh my goodness, all these clients, all my 15 clients or whatever, like they can't work. Oh my goodness, like what does that mean for us? And in those moments, not just simply thinking, okay, how do I want to approach this and the legacy I want to leave and the value I want to bring to people and what I'm about as a human, but also how do I want to feel? Right? I've never thought about that. So I think I'm going to take some time to reflect on that after this episode.
Oh, I love it, Rocky. Yeah. And just know that your feelings are tied to the goals you set. And so checking in against goals and feelings goes a long way. It's so interesting when you said that. So one of the things that, if I can give a practical kind of post-it note moment for people, right? The first is, how do I want to feel? And do my goals reflect me getting there, right? And the second is, I learned this from a mentor of mine, Dr. Danny Friedland. He had a phrase called what matters most right now. And he has all these tips and tricks, and we teach a lot of this. We have programs all around this. But one of the things that I've noticed is that when I ask myself what matters most right now, it's kind of a temperature gauge on where I'm at. And if it's like being right, I might need to take a step back and take a moment, right? If it's, holding space for my team or my family, if what matters most right now is that me recognizing I'm dysregulated and I'm below that line, then how might I get myself back up there? And a lot of that is just the power of a question. So we teach a lot and we help teams decide what are those guidepost questions that will help us get us back to center. And so as you're reflecting on how do you want to feel, you might just think about like, how can that inform how you show up as a leader?
When I started my role with the company I'm at now, my day job, if you will, not my side hustle, my fun, volunteer work with HDI, local chapters, I was an operations manager. I hadn't been in the role before. I've been in kind of similar adjacent type roles. And I had a team of, I think, 6 or 7 leaders at the time. And we had a daily huddle that I stood up. And every meeting, I asked one question. It wasn't anything tied to the metrics because you gave me those in chat, right? It wasn't even how can I help you, right? Because that happened throughout the week in one-on-ones. The question was, tell me something good today. What good happened today? And so I think it's funny as you pose that, like the questions that we ask as leaders of ourselves and of our teams, right? I think have so much value and ability to impact their well-being, their thought process, how they think about the business. And rewinding to the Lisa who was in the hospital bed, how easy would it have been for Lisa in that moment to ask her team, hey, can you take this?
Yeah.
Like, can you handle it?
Yeah.
But no, right? It's a simple question, which would have resulted in a completely different, outcome or a different chain of events. And so I love that. What are some of the other questions that you find asking yourself or asking your team to really be able to put those pieces together to help identify burnout coming or prevent it?
Oh my gosh. So let's do prevention for now, and I'll go back to identifying. But one of my favorite questions is, how can we make this easy? How can we make this easy? Are you kidding me? Isn't it supposed to be hard and complex? Well, no. How can we make this easy? Okay, who knows more than I do? Who's energized by this topic? Who has experience I don't have? What strengths can we lean into, right? We use 2 assessments inside our firm regularly, Clifton Strengths, because we know that's burnout prevention when you're in your strength zone, and Colby, which is around looking at your cognitive mind, like your innate mode of operation. And when you combine those 2 with the question is, how might we make this easy? Or who might we bring into this conversation? What other voice is missing? It's game changer. So the other thing is, you've heard the book, I'm sure, Who Not How, literally just saying that out loud to the team. Another one that I think about a lot is when people are stuck and they, especially in tech with all the innovation that has to happen on a blink of an eye, the word imagine Imagine we were to whatever the goal is, and then asking the team, what resources do we need? Whose voices do we need? And what issues do you anticipate? So when you say the word imagine, it actually gives you the freedom to be wrong, because no one said, what should we do? No, imagine we were to go this route. So questions like that are a game changer. And there's a book called Conversations Worth Having, and we do sprints and labs on conversations worth having. We work with the authors regularly, and we help people generate questions that will get you above the line quickly and open up the ideas of what's possible rather than feeling stuck. And honestly, a lot of times leaders are asking themselves, like, why is this so hard? Or why can't I get this done? Which are really depreciative in nature. And so when you're in that place, we offer the question, what's at stake that I care about? Or how might we make it easy?
I love it makes me think of two things. Number one, the old adage, don't bring me a problem, bring me a solution. Right? Which is kind of what those questions are gearing towards, right? It's that same idea of, let's not focus on the problem. How can we solve it? Imagine, what can we do? Second thing is something I think you might have said when we first talked, Lisa, when I first got to meet you. It's words create worlds.
Oh
right?
my gosh, our worlds do create worlds. Yes. Yeah.
Words have power. They have meaning, and that can be question. That can be how you approach someone. It can be how you talk about them, to them, around them, right? It's this, even as you talk about these mentors in your life, how they talk about Lisa to other people, or how you even talk about them. Right? Words have so much power, and words are tied, like the words that come out of our mouth are tied directly to what we believe to be true, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And they have energy too, right? And they're either going to depreciate or deplete you, or they're going to appreciate and energize you. So we go back to the whole thing, like, the head and the heart connection with even the words we choose and being mindful enough. So one of the things so if Bonnie's the world we live in, we at RLD Group say that the antidote is firm, which is flexible, intuitive, resilient, mindful. Well, how can you be that way in this world? It's the questions you ask. It's the conversations you have. It's playing to your strengths and recognizing when you're below the line. So it's kind of a full circle moment, because you and your stand-up huddle, what's good today, or what are we celebrating? Even when we coach our clients, the first thing we say is, what are the celebrations? Like, before you tell me all the stuff that sucks and is really awful, let's get your energy up. So let's get you into a place of remembering who you are and the good that you've already brought, so that then we can have more energy in our resource tank to tackle the stuff that feels big and hairy and scary. So I love that you did that in your stand-ups.
If HR allowed every leader and every organization to require mandatory a gratitude journal from every employee, the world would look very different.
And I think people really get stuck in the gratitude space because they feel like they're doing it wrong. And they feel like, well, I don't feel grateful right now. When you're in burnout, it's really hard to find gratitude. And so what I had to work on with myself was, what? I woke up today, right? Yeah. I have the opportunity to sleep for 4 hours. Because the other thing in burnout that I definitely know now scientifically is that when we rest, we're actually regenerating all of our cells. We're flushing the lymphatics out of our brains so that we can have more clear heads. And, I wasn't grateful for a nap. I used to say, I'll sleep when I'm dead. And I had to get to, I'm so grateful I can rest today. Because I had that belief that it was weak and who are you to rest? No. But so I think from a gratitude journal standpoint, the science behind it is there. It's how do we help people when they're really stuck and really just feel like, well, I can't get laid off, or I'm not grateful for this job. I'm busting my ass. It's like, wait a minute. I still get to do cool things. And maybe there's one person at work I like working with, or one customer I love supporting, and just find the smallest things. Because, gratitude has tremendous impact, but it's not always accessible to people.
Yeah. No, I think that's an interesting, just way of talking about gratitude. I think I find it much easier to be grateful in the moments of chaos when I have a bigger purpose, right? That's part of why I type to my desk, because my job is stressful at times. And I remember I get to show up to be a leader that leaves things better than I found it. Right, that's one of my bullet points. I'm thankful that I have the opportunity to help fix this poo-poo, that I'm in right now.
Well, Rocky, you said get to, and I think get to is a really important thing, because so many people feel like I have to, I must. So back to words, even shifting, I get to lead this team. I get to have this conversation. How lucky am I? Because I believe leadership is, how do I want to say what I want to say? it's not just a gift, but you have, as a leader, it's your responsibility to take it seriously and see it as I get to lead, not I have to, right? Because you'll show up differently if you have to lead versus you get to lead.
In a breakout I did on servant leadership in Asia, and I want to do, and I'm working with Ray and Bruno. I don't know if you know who she is, fantastic leader, trainer, facilitator, and I'm working through how to turn it into a workshop, because I talk about servant leadership and the impact it has on outcome, right, and experience for your people and your customers, and in the term that is coined, in the coined servant leadership concept is steward. Right, as leader, you have a responsibility to steward that role and those people and that. So I know we're coming up on time, Lisa. We probably will have you on again if you're open for it, because we could keep talking and you have so much good wisdom. I want to ask you a final send-off question before you have to go. If number one, before I ask that question, anything else you want to throw out about RLD Group, about Bonnie, just for the audience, anything you want to crash course real quick before I ask you our send-off question?
Crash course would be, it's all on our website. I LinkedIn, I live stream regularly. I have a podcast on burnout. And so, you don't have to do a crash course. We got you covered. Just find us right wherever you want to go, and we got you. And I
Control,
think
delete,
the other thing is
podcast,
Control,
right?
Delete with Lisa Duerre. Yeah. But I think the thing, Rocky, is to remember the question, if we leave anybody with anything else, is what matters most right now. Just check in with yourself. What matters most right now will get you at least conscious enough to go, oh, here's where I'm at, or how do I need to course correct?
Awesome. Now, Lisa, the final send-off question.
The final send-off question.
If you could hit rewind and talk to younger Lisa, maybe it's pre-hospital Lisa, what's the words of advice or wisdom you would share with younger Lisa?
Oh, wow. You're going to make me cry. Words of advice for younger Lisa. You are worthy of rest. Your latest project does not define you. The people around you care, and give them the opportunity to rise. You don't have to do it all.
Words that leaders everywhere can heed and take and apply. Lisa, thank you so much for your time today. It's been such a joy talking to you. I think our audience is really going to thoroughly enjoy this episode and enjoy the wisdom you have to offer for tech leaders and to avoid burnout. And hopefully they dive in, check out RLD, the resources you guys have to offer, the Control Delete podcast, and we'll definitely have you on in the future. Thank you so much for your time, and we will catch you on the next episode of Bytes and Banter.